أهلا وسهلا فيكم متابعينا بحلقة اليوم من برنامج يلا. اليوم نحن نستضيف دانييل لفيشيتز اللي هو حفيد عوديد لفيشيتز الصحفي المتقاعد الإسرائيلي اللي تم اختطافه من بلدة نير عوز وهو في عمر 84 عام. عوديد اللي يعد أحد أكبر الرهائن سنا لدى حماس عنده أحفاد وأولاد أحفاد. اليوم رح نسمع من دانييل وهو أحد أحفاده عن تأثير هي التجربة المؤلمة جدا على عائلته وكيف بيحافظوا على الأمل رغم كل التحديات، وشو رسالة عائلته لعوديد اليوم للعالم وكيف بدهم أنهم يرجعوه على بيته لعند أهله. خليكم معنا. Thank you so much for joining us today, Daniel, to talk about your grandfather, Oded. I want you to share with us a little bit more about Oded and what he means to you and your family. And I know that he is also a fellow journalist.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about him.
My grandfather, first of all, is a great family man. He loves his children, his great children. He's the only great grandfather held hostage in the world. All the children and grandchildren, they were going with him in the kibbutz with a golf car. He was also always so kind to them. He was, they call him a super Saba, super grandfather. He was sitting with us every Friday and to have Friday dinner. He was playing the piano after. He was fighting for the coexistence, for the rights of the Palestinians, for the rights of the Bedouins. For as a journalist, as a left-wing journalist, he wrote a lot about everything. He was one of the first journalists who interviewed Yasser Arafat. He really believed in the possibility of peace, in the possibility of a two-state solution. He wrote a lot about the issue that Hamas is in Gaza and the problem, and he believed that Gaza deserved a better future than the future of Hamas. He really believed in the possibility of peace, in the possibility of a two-state solution, in the possibility of living side by side. So it's very sad for him that the kibbutz that he built in his own hands was completely destroyed in October 7.
So tell me about that day, if you can, Daniel, in summary. And of course, how you guys also have been coping with the shock of both of your grandparents being abducted. Now, we know that your grandmother, thankfully, has been returned and freed, but your grandfather is still there.
8 o'clock in the morning, it was the last time that my grandfather spoke with us. He told us that there are a lot of shooting and they're speaking in Arabic, but probably soon the IDF will arrive. He closed the door of the handle of the safe room, and then when my grandmother returned, we could hear their story was that 5 terrorists breached their home, went inside. When my grandfather closed the door of the handle, they shot 5 bullets in the door, and one of them injured him. The terrorist, Hamas terrorist, went inside, kidnapped an 85 years old woman, my grandmother, which is a woman which have a lot of pain issues, big problem in the leg because of fracture she got 28 years ago. She walked with special shoes, and they just took her from bed with her pyjama, and they just grabbed my grandfather, dragged both of them at home, this 85 and 83 years old that worked all their life for peace and coexistence. And they took them, and they took my grandmother, they rolled her inside the carpet, they took her, they put her on a motorbike, legs in front, hands behind, legs in front, opposite, and then the last look for her was my grandfather. He lost conscious because of blood pressure issues, so they just threw him on the backyard when they passed the fence into Gaza, and there was the civilians, thousands of civilians were around her, and they were the one who were beating her there before she got into the tunnels, and that was a huge break heart for her. Then inside the tunnels, they took her and they walked her for 5-6 hours while she can't walk. Another hostage came back, told us that she just grabbed her in the hand and took her and told her, "Yochke, come, you'll be fine." and she spoke in Arabic, so she told the terrorist, please let us rest a little bit. And then in some point they didn't, and she told my grandma, just sit, what they can do, they murdered both our husbands, maximum they will murder us here. And every time they sat, and for punishment, when they got to a pile of sandbags, they moved them forward and they told them go back and front and back and front. I speak about more than 80 years old woman, elderly, and man, elderly man. I mean,
Yes.
all that happened, it's so devastating, because there is nothing that is written that is possible to do something like that in the Quran. That's against everything there. And my grandfather that is still there, we were sure that he's dead when my grandma came back. After she lost 10 kilo in 17 days, she was about to die in the tunnels. She was just days from dying. And luckily we have her back. And when she came back, she told us that our grandfather is dead. But then in the first deal, two hostages came back. One of them said that she saw him on October 7. He was laying down next to her with white galabia, injured. They told him that they are going to treat his hand. And another one told us that she'd been there for 6 months. Remember, she was released after 55 days,
Yes.
but she said that she was there for 6 months, and he was there with her for 1 month. He changed for her diapers. He helped her. They had no medicine at all, barely food where they've been, and he fainted because he had the blood pressure issues.
Oh.
And they took him, and since then we have no information about him. So for about 8 months now.
Oh my God. And he is 84 years old.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, Danielle, since you mentioned how your grandfather was a left-wing journalist, even though this is a humanitarian, I mean, this is about human beings, you know, not politics. But how do you feel when you see the left response in the West to what happened to people in your community, which many of whom identify to being on the left?
Forgetting that October 7th started because of the worst thing that happened to the Jewish people since the Holocaust. I believe that they have to work much more for the hostages. I can say, you want to protest for the Palestinians, you want to protest against the Israeli government policy, whatever, that is fine. But you have to really exactly on the same time to protest against Hamas, to protest for the release of the hostages. If you only protest for that, it's non-relevant. I mean, what is the word here? To tell Hamas it's good what you've done? To emphasize what Hamas did? I mean, that's the worst thing. It's a terror organization who went to make the worst terror thing can happen. They raped a German woman in my kibbutz, a terrorist, his father, and then they murdered her. They did things that they cannot support, and they have to support the release of the hostages for the end of the war. That's what I'm saying all the time. And I want to see the Gazans, and I see now the movement. I see that there is a movement in Gaza, because if we look at the surveys, the ones that are now mostly not happy from the existence of Hamas and what happened are the Gazans. Mm-hmm. They told me one time, the guy that is the ambassador of the Vatican in the UN, he told me, when you are away from reality, you are driven by ideology. So I tell everyone, look more to the reality of what happened in October 7. It's devastating what happened now to some innocent people in Gaza as well. But many of them been in kibbutz Nir Oz on October 7, supported the act of Hamas. I look in the eyes of all the left wing to say, my grandfather, he is a big peace fighter. And I'm saying that in October 7, Hamas kidnapped peace. And peace now is held in a tunnel in Gaza. And if you want to make sure for a bright future and a better future, you have to push everyone to release Oded Lifshitz and all the hostages to make the possibility of peace. Because Hamas isn't peace. My grandfather always say that. Hamas is the worst thing happened to Gaza, and it should have been treated way before.
Thank you for your message. I wanted to ask you, Danielle, how do you maintain and hold on to hope? And what message would you like to send your grandfather through this platform?
I can say that it's amazing to see the real support from the real people of the world, because I believe that most of them are supporting the hostages. I believe there has to be more awareness about the hostages issue, that there are more than 70 live hostages now in Gaza. Personally, to my grandfather, I can tell him that I hope that he's strong, and to tell him that I'm doing everything to bring him back, and I'm doing everything to continue his legacy, and that I cleaned his cactus garden and I took a lot of weed out of it. 50 volunteers were there, so the cactus garden is clean and
wow.
waiting for him to come back. And if not, we will continue it as a memory and as his life mission. And my grandmother, she's really waiting for him. She physically recovered after 6 months, but mentally she's waiting until he'll be back and all the other hostages.
How is your grandmother today? How was it when she returned to you guys?
So when I understood she's coming back, I was overjoyed. I didn't even know that she's alive until October 21st, when it was Saturday that suddenly we got a message in the Telegram of Hamas, when I got so many calls. And when she came back, I was very happy and very sad, because when I saw her, this tough, strong woman, looking at her and seeing that she'd been suffered such a trauma and abuse, losing so big weight and can't really move well. And I understood that she's in such a trauma because her hand is mostly shaky and it was steady like that.
Wow.
And she was like, the body was in such a hard work to keep itself. And she said that she would never, ever survive 50 days there. Hamas is not Palestine and it's a terror organization, but it's a very devastating moment for her.
Absolutely. What are, in your opinion, some of the actions or initiatives that you think could be effective in bringing more attention to your grandfather and the rest of the hostages today to help them be released?
So I think we have to tell the specific stories, that they will know more about my grandfather, more about those elderly there. There are women there, which are more than 9 months there. Imagine that. And maybe they are pregnant. Maybe they are not with us anymore. I'm sure that the thing that we have to combine, if we combine that the end of the war is the release of all the hostages and the end of the suffer of the Gazan and to rebuild Gaza is connected directly with the release of the hostages, I think that is a very, very, very important thing. On that way, we can bring more awareness to the world. So it's like, as I said, release the hostages, save humanity, save Gaza. As much as we say all of that together, I'm sure that will bring a lot of impact also to see the continuation of bringing back the hostages and having a better future, to start to have maybe a better future for the area and for sure end the war and start the rebuild of Gaza. So that should be the sentence that can bring more awareness to the world in my eyes.
That's very powerful. I really appreciate your time today, Danielle, and I think that your message is very important and very timely, and we look forward to the release of your grandfather and the rest of the hostages, and we pray for that.
Make the world pressure. Bring those hostages back home and let's continue for a better future.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.